Hey guys, welcome back to Luke's Garage. Today we are going to be installing a heated seat kit in a 2011 Dodge Ram. It's pretty easy install, just takes time, but we'll go over every step in detail, how to do it right, so that you can be toasty warm if you decide to do this on your own. I know I'm looking forward to it. It's been negative 32 in some of the parts I've been in Montana, which is great if you like cold weather, but I'm not a big fan. It gets old every year, more and more. But Montana's beautiful, and there's a reason we live here. There's a reason people don't live here, and negative 32 is a big part of it. So anyways, enough of my story. Let's get to the install. I hope you guys enjoy this. I'm also going to be putting up one, doing the same thing on a 2017 Chevy Silverado as well. So very easy to do, just takes time. Okay, so every kit for a single seat has two pads. Basically all the kits that you can buy, they're just a universal heated seat kit. So if you search that, you get a million results. I picked this one specifically because, as you can see, it has a dial that matches most of the newer styles of vehicles, and it has 6 positions. So this kit was $100. Again, all of this stuff is pretty much the same thing, but the harness is what you're paying for with the switch. A lot of the switches on the cheaper ones are just an on and off, and I'm not a big fan because I always, generally like it somewhere in the middle, and I like to have that option if so be I need it. So, robust harness, still very easy to install. I'll show you how to do that too. This is a 3-wire harness, so you got your black is your ground. Wire is your 12-volt constant, so that's always on, and then you have your ignition wire, so accessory. So anytime you turn your key, this little guy says, yeah, there's somebody in the car, the key is on, I'll turn the system on. When the key's turned off, it turns off this whole system. So I've put these in other vehicles as well. Love the kit, built very well, so worth the extra 40 bucks that I paid for this just to get quality material. Some of the cheaper kits fall apart pretty easy and are definitely not built all that well, honestly, and the switches, again, having this feature is awesome. So anyways, we'll get to the install, and I hope you guys like it. Feel free to hit me up with questions, and I'll try and help you as much as I can. Okay, so we are in the truck, obviously, and what I want to do is show you guys how to remove all this trim. So in case you want to replace your factory radio to something a little nicer, add buttons, so any obviously factory options that weren't on this, if you want to add those additionally, or do what I'm doing today where I'm going to add in heated seat switches aftermarket. So usually they go right here, but the ones I got for this kit have the chrome bezel and their 6-position switch, so they won't mount here. So I'll have to kind of figure out where I want to put them so that they're going to look semi-factory. Obviously they're not going to look all the way perfect, but they'll do what we need to do when it's 0 degrees out next week. So the first thing you need to do is remove all your trim around your shifter, and remove this whole lower, basically this lower bezel. In order to do that, pull out this rubber tray, just pops out, exposes 2 Phillips head screws. And then you want to also remove this trim ring. So when you just stick your fingers under there, it's just clips, and just go around popping every single one. You can hear them coming up. There we go. And you don't want to just grab one side and just start reefing on it, because you'll end up breaking this ring. It's pretty, it's not very stout. But there we go. Trim ring out. So what that does is it frees this whole unit up, so this whole thing going around here into this tray. One of those comes out. So the next thing you want to do, lift your glove box up to give you a little extra room, and then get on these 2 Phillips head screws. So kind of already loosen them up so you don't have to sit here watching me do it from square one. Okay, reach in there, pull those guys out, And then you should be able to, so what I always do is grab right here and just start popping it up. Same way with this side, pop it up and it's free. So there you go, one big part out. So now we have everything exposed, your shifter, linkage, everything down here is all exposed. The next thing we want to do is get right up on top here. There's this little tray, you just kind of pop it up, and what it does is it exposes 2 torque bits. So what I'll do is switch over to a torque screwdriver, so hang tight. I will cut this video and get that loaded up. Yep, come right back. Okay, so we have our T20 Torx bit. It's the star. Just put that in there, obviously, and unscrew these 2 screws, torque screws. Okay, should be out. Those will pop right out and put them in your tray. I just use the plastic tray, the very first part that we took out, to put all my screws and whatnot in so I don't lose them. I'll get that later. And then if your truck is equipped with it, I popped this out already. Just get a little flathead and put it behind there. It's just a little trim plate, and it's got 3 little holders, clips, and behind there is another torque, same size, T20. So we'll take that guy out. Okay, put it down there in our holder, and then that really should be everything holding this dash in. What I do is get down here right at the corner and then just start popping both of the corners, kind of an easy little spot to hook onto. You still got to get this torque screw out of here, or else this thing's not going to come out. There we go, popped right out. Okay, we should be fairly loose. Just come right up the side. See, everything just pops right out. You can take this whole thing out. Just keep pulling around the edges. Again, don't just try to take everything out from, you know, the very bottom. This little Dodge tray pops right out. And there you go. That's as easy as it is to take that apart. So you just come back behind. I can't see what I'm doing, so it's going to be awesome. But you come back behind. I think there's 5 different cables to disconnect. They're pretty easy to take apart. What I'll do is, you get what I'm saying. Just undo your cables, and then this whole thing will come right out. What it does is it exposes all of your socket bolts for your stereo, but what it does for me is I can take this inside and figure out where I want to draw the holes that I'm going to cut for these switches, and it also gives me space behind the dash to run my wires. So anyways, that's all there is to it, guys. Let me know if you have any questions. Please make sure to like, subscribe. I'll put up another video. It'll be a continuation of what we just did here, but installation of the heated seats. Okay, we have our dash part ready. What I want to do, what you guys should do, is take your switch, figure out the measurement. I know that this is 20 millimeters, so it's around 6-position switch. Like I was saying, it has a chrome bezel, so it'll match everything else that is on here. And then figure out a place that looks factory. There's going to be 2 of them. And what I decided on was a mount basically right here. There'll be 2 of them underneath. I tried to offset them, but it just didn't look right. And for now, it seems to be the best fit, and I'm happy with it. So what you want to do is center everything up before you make your cuts. Obviously before you cut, look at the back side of this thing. So we'll flip this over and make sure that there is even room. So big part of where I'm cutting is obviously this big blank spot, which is awesome. Anywhere else I cut, there's just tons of stuff in the way. Yeah, it really wouldn't work out anywhere else if I was going to mount it in this. Obviously you could put it anywhere you want to if you want to mount it in seats or any of that kind of stuff. It works just as fine. I prefer somewhere where people can see it and ease of access, and it looks semi-factory here. If, you know, in my head it does. We'll see what the end product looks like. But I want it to be measured directly under these dials right here, obviously. So I figured out where my center point was, using, you know, use a straight edge somewhere on this or wherever you're at to get your measurements, and I came up with 1 3/4 inches. Always use a soft tape because nothing's flat. So what I did, came straight down, obviously 1 3/4 inches over, made my pencil mark, and then using this next straight edge right here, came down 1 inch. So there we go, and that is my pencil mark on both sides. And so now that I know I'm square, this is going to be, you know, give it the more factory look. Obviously it takes 10 seconds to measure, make it look correct. You can just hodgepodge it together and drill holes wherever you want to. But, you know, these are lined up exact same distance from everything. They got a good 90-degree on them. They're going to line up directly underneath of these dials, so they should look factory. What I'll do now is get set up to drill these holes and show you how I do that. So you always want to start with drilling your pilot hole. So pick your smallest, you know, one of your smaller drill bits that's really sharp, and punch your holes. Okay, the next thing I like to use is what they call a unibit. You can buy a set of 3 of these at Harbor Freight for like $8. So we'll just punch holes all the way down to, this goes to 3/4 inch, which isn't quite 20 millimeter, but it's close enough that, you know, I'll get the hole perfect based on this, perfectly aligned, and then I can Dremel those areas out once I'm done. And you always want to stop and make sure everything looks fine. Obviously, still not going to fit, but going smooth. Keep it nice and straight. Okay, so we are 3/4 inch hole. Everything looks fine. What I'll do is get lined up for the Dremel. So I'll take a break real quick and get that all set up. So this is a great time to make sure that both your holes, I know that, you know, just alignment wise, this one's a tad bit lower. So what I did for the final touch is you cut just a 20 millimeter hole through your cardboard. I used a protractor just to test fit. See how that hole is going to work. Looks fine. So I know how much I can cheat this hole. I thought it'd line up a little bit better, but it was close enough. So what I do is line up that hole and trace it with my pencil, and then what that does is gives me a Dremel template. So that circle is not very good, but it gets me close enough to that dimension that I want to cut. So I'll cut that, then I'll measure the second hole over here to see my distance with that switch and adjust it accordingly, and then I'll show you how to mount these switches. Okay, and you always want to start test fitting your switches basically as you get them done. As soon as the tail end of them can sit down in there, you want to circle it up, you know, trace the actual switch. So what that'll do is give you a perfect circle the whole way around, and then you can come in and Dremel that out. So I'll do that really quick, and then I'll show you once I get this cut out the rest of the way how these fit. Okay, so we have our hole cut. It matches up. What you want to do with these switches, there's this little tail that sticks out. We'll have to make a notch in the plastic for that tail. What that does is it keeps this barrel of the switch from rotating while it's in there, but I mean, it's super tight fit like I want it. And then, I mean, it'll just sit right down in there. So what I want to do is make my marks on my second hole over here so that I got my height the same. So I'll measure that out and make sure that we're cut the same. But yeah, it's going to fit in there pretty nice. How I make that little notch is I set this barrel in here. So I'll take this camera. You guys can see the same thing. So the barrel's in there, and I want to just make sure that it is lined up, you know, upright from these switches, kind of so, you know, the orientation of it looks right. And then I'll take my pencil and get down here, and I will, as you can see my hand, this is super helpful. What I do though is just take my pencil and mark where that little notch needs to be, right there, and then I'll take that barrel back out and cut that notch in. And then once I get that cut in, I'll show you what that looks like. Okay, so our notch is cut in, so when I put that barrel in, it won't be able to spin in here. Hold it nicely in place. Now what I got to do is obviously do the same thing over on this side. So same thing you did here, opposite. Pretty simple. But yeah, so what I want to do on this one for sure is make sure that this top is level with this right here. So what I'll do is take my soft tape measure. I'll get this out here and show you guys. So I want to make sure that with my soft tape, you know, I'm at a 1/2 inch, give or take. So I want to come over here, measure up 1/2 inch. So right here at that 1/2 inch, that's where I want that barrel to be. Yeah, so what I'll do is I'll measure that out and get that cut out, and then we'll go on to the more installation on this kit. So there are 4 bolts holding Dodge seats in. The back ones are 18. And so we'll start with those. All you want to do is just get your ratchet on them and obviously take them out. So I'll do that really quick, and then I'll show you the front ones, and we'll get those removed, and we'll take the seat out. Okay, so on the front of the truck, you need to take off all your plastics. So a lot of this stuff just pops out. And then you have 2 more bolts. Okay, so now what we want to do is run the leads from our seats. So I'm kind of doing a preliminary layout where I'm going to have these come up. These are the leads tying into the seat pads. Everything goes under the carpet. So we want to remove our door sill plate. So that can go in the back, and then we have access to our carpet. And this just peels up, you know, and however you want to run your run your wires. You just want to get them so they're up underneath the dash, obviously. So what I'll do is just pick a route. Any route will do, you know, following wherever this factory harness goes for the seats might be a good option. I think it goes over here and follows up the, you know, tunnel wall up into where I want to ultimately plug in this harness to my relay, and then I can run my power. Power actually has to go into the engine bay on this one because that's where the spark plug, that's where the fuse blocks are, so I can tie that in. So what I'll do is just pick a route, like I said, kind of lay this out shortest route possible to give yourself the most length on your wire. I always recommend going over here against the tunnel and then up in, just because, you know, there's no feet on it. Not that it matters all that much, but it does after a while. Depends who you have. I wouldn't want water and all that garbage on this stuff. But so I'll do that, and then I'll show you guys where that ends up. Okay, so we have our seat inside. So when you guys start to remove your seat covers, you first want to get all of your seat plastics off of this whole surrounding. A lot of times you'll have seat belts you'll actually need to take off, and those are generally a T50 torque. I don't need to take this one off, but sometimes you do. But yeah, if you get lucky, newer vehicles tend to have these plastic clips or catches that just kind of fit underneath the frames of these seats or in random places. Here's a super long one in the front, but they make it really easy to take seats apart. Yeah, that's pretty much all there is to it. Just take your time taking your plastics off. A lot of these big clips obviously goes through the back of the seat. And you can see I've already got one of the butts installed, and you run all of your cables out the back end of your seats, not the front, because obviously, you're not going to sit on it, but it's coming out the back. Some people try and run it on the front and cut the foam out. You don't need to do that. That's not installed properly. But yeah, super easy to do. So what I'll do is show you the seat cushion installation and the back installation as well. So we'll start taking this all apart. But yeah, just go piece by piece, methodically taking it all apart, and hopefully it all goes back together the exact same way. So if you guys are working on Dodge Ram seats, in order to get this side panel off, you need to pop this panel out first. And what it does is it allows you to get to the screws that are holding on this plastic, and you'll need to take that off in order to do these heated seats. So in order to pop this out, there's these little tabs. There should be 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Obviously, 2 on the bottom. You just reach underneath and push them up, and then push this out at the same time. It'll come flopping out of there, and then you guys can remove that panel. So what you want to do is take your sticky pads, and before you stick them down, you want to put them under the fabric and make sure that they're going to fit where you want them to. So these tabs on your seats, on the actual fabric, you see a lot of people cut these off. And what that does is it loosens up the seat so that when you reinstall it, the actual material is all floppy and it doesn't look like a factory install. So you always want to leave that in place, and these things are designed to cut for that reason. So what you want to do is set your material where you want it, and then if you can see on the camera, you want to take your black Sharpie and draw a line where you want to make your cut so that you can obviously make your cut and that will fit down through there. So what I will do is I'll get this pad ready, and I'll show you how you make your cuts on it. You don't want to cut in 1 5/8 inches. You want to leave that on your edge for your gap. Otherwise this element won't work past this point. So I'll take this out now and make my cut right here on this line where I drew it, and then we can put it back in and stick it down. It should be good to go. We're just cutting, leaving about 1/2 inch in between the material. To 1 inch. Okay, so here is our hole that we have cut, obviously following our line so it'll fit on the seat. So the amount of material that you have to leave on both sides is at least 1 5/8 inches. This kit also comes with these adhesive back strips. What you have to do after you make your cuts is peel this off, and you have to put this in the hole that you just cut and sandwich it over. And what that does is cover up the exposed material that's inside of this mesh, or it basically covers up the mesh material, so that if anything metal touches this, it'll shorten it out. This way it protects it, it keeps moisture out of it. So make sure to do that. So with the installation on the seat backrest, you have to measure on your pad where the thermostat is on the actual pad, and behind it with your Sharpie, make a mark and then cut that out of the foam so that when your back rests against this, you don't feel that thermostat in your back. Again, as you did on the seat butt cushion, make your mark and cut your pad. And then with this bar, it fits down between your pad. And these hog rings I leave in place. These are the existing ones. I just pulled them apart using basic tools, needle nose pliers, just enough that they maintain hook. You know, they're still hooked in place on that factory bar. And then you also have it in place so that when you put the actual material mount down in there, you can recrimp it and it'll hold this in place like factory. Okay, so before we want to reinstall the seat, I've put the seat obviously back in the truck, same spot we were at. You want to make sure it fits, and your two plugs that you ran up underneath the carpet right here plug into obviously the bottom of your seat and the backrest of your seat. You want to replug all your harnesses in, make sure that these actual brackets of your seat are not sitting on any of your wiring before you crank it down. So just verify all your connections are correct, and zip tie them up and get them out of the way so they're not kind of snagging up on anything, and they have enough slack in them so they're not stressed and going to break at any point. So what I'll do now is reinstall the seat, and then we'll go to installation of the wiring. Our wiring, as I showed you earlier, comes up underneath of here. Just got to put that back together. It's not quite tight. So both of our leads to our seats are here. They both come up into relays, which then these guys will connect to the back of our switches on our dash, which will sit right up here. So the big thing is with your two relays, you want to make sure that they are both completely out of the way of everything. Conveniently in this Dodge, there is a ton of room in here to pretty much do whatever you want. And then what we got to do is take our power feed, remote turn on and ground, and run those over to our fuse block off of both of them, so they will go this way towards the steering wheel, and then I'll have to find a hole in the firewall to run those through. So basically just make sure all your connections are tight, everything's out of the way, fits the best it can, and get the most slack of your wiring that way, because you'll need obviously a ton of your wiring to go up on this truck through the firewall to the fuse block in the engine bay. So yeah, pretty basic wiring, just make sure everything's connected in the dash part, but I'll do a different video, or I'll do a second part of this wiring here in a second, how you connect all these to your actual fuse block to power everything up. So another side note for the wiring, you really want to make sure before you install everything that your harness that is going to coincide with your actual switch is on the same side. So this side comes up on the passenger side, so I want it on the passenger switch. That way, obviously, if you get these crossed, your driver's side is going to turn on your passenger side, vice versa. And you don't want that. Pretty easy to switch. Obviously, you just take these out and flip them, but just a quick side note. Okay, so we are to the wiring portion of the heated seat installation. What I'm looking for first is a common ground. Generally, anywhere where there's a screw going into the metal of the frame of the car or anywhere else, and a remote, ignition wire source. So the best way to do this, generally always, for an ignition source, you guys can either tap into your fuse block. Sometimes there'll be something saying that there's, an ignition fuse, and that's fine to tap into. And what that means is that every time you turn your ignition on, it sends a signal to the relay in these heated seats that, hey, the truck's on, somebody's in it, I can turn on. And then when the key's out, they turn off. So what I'm doing in this Dodge is anywhere where there's obviously a 12 volt DC, what I did was pulled off the plug, because this should only come on when the key is inserted and turned on. So what I want to do is verify that that's the case. So I got my ground wire, I've got my hot wire hooked into the hot lead on that plug. So I will turn the key, and then looking down here, hooking my grounds to the screw that goes into this metal that attaches to the frame. So as I touch that, my number should change, and it does. So that confirms that that is an ignition wire, and that also that ground source works out fine. So yeah, we'll take that. I'll do that installation right there with the wire situation that I've got going on. Feel free to ask any wiring questions that you guys have. Every car is different. This is just one example. This Dodge happens to have the fuse block up in the engine, and I'd rather run less wires up there as possible. Yeah, so what I'll do is now I'll show you the power wire that feeds the system and how I run that. Okay, so the big test, turn the key on, and we have power. That is awesome. Now what we need to do is hook up our final 12 volt constant. So it's this big red guy down there. And so what I've done is, obviously I've run it down, around, under the carpet. I'm going to tighten this all up, and then out the firewall. I'm going to silicone that shut once I'm done, so no water can come in here. We'll run up to the engine bay and I'll show you what I've got for connections up there. And so the final connections are going to be right on the battery, because that will be my 12 volt constant. So I will make these final connections and tighten all these wires up and meet you guys back in the cab. Alright guys, the ultimate test. These have been sitting on a little while. Right where I'm sitting is nice and toasty warm. That is warm as well. All the way back of the seat is warm. Man, this works great. Just in time for all of that to come back, and some cold weather. So this is going to be awesome. I hope this was helpful for you guys. Feel free to hit me up with a lot of questions if you have any for installation. I know you can only cover so much on one truck. I'm going to be uploading another truck that I've installed the same seat heaters on as well. So, what I missed here, hopefully I covered there. But as always, thanks for coming to Luke's Garage. I hope you guys enjoyed the videos. Like, subscribe. I'll have a bunch more stuff I'm uploading here shortly. And I will catch you guys later.